You know, I really like Delaware. I've only been here 4 years, but I've been coming here with my family for over 50 years. As a tourist, I can remember my dad renting a little fisherman shack down at Dewey Beach for $10 a month, and he used to complain about the price. The thing I really like about Delaware is it's a place where you can get stuff done. I call it a big little man. It may be a small state, but if you know the right people and you have good ideas, people are open, they're responsive, and those good ideas can go a long way. I happen to have spent most of my business life in California. I lived in California for 30 years, and I came here really unintentionally. I had to move here because my parents got sick in 2005, and my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my dad had a couple of heart attacks trying to take care of her. So I was the only sibling that really had the flexibility to come here, just pack up and come and take care of them and take care of their assets. My background is in renewable energy. I have 20 years of experience in renewable energy and probably another 5 in venture capital. I was approached way back in the early 80s by a group out of Manhattan that had an idea that they were going to team up with some of their clients, which were municipals in California, and build power projects. The reason they had that idea was that the Carter administration had recently changed the law. It was an amendment to the Federal Power Act, and it allowed private individuals or corporations to build power plants. They approached me, and first I just kind of worked for them as a scout and was sort of a go-between to some of their clients, which were the state of California, irrigation districts, small towns. And then after a while, they began to ask me to help with the money-raising part, with acquiring engineering, with utilizing the engineers to write RFPs to hire one of the top 10 construction companies to build these plants. And we did about half a dozen small hydroelectric power plants. So within about 2 years, we had enough income flowing in so that we thought we'd go public. And I was asked to join the management team. And so in 1984, we were the first independent power company to go public. That was a term that Wall Street used to sort of label us. We were really developers of power plants. And we went public for a very small amount of money. I don't even remember how much it was. I think it was less than $20 million. But it gave us access to capital. And so with that access to capital, we were able to grow pretty rapidly. So between 1984 and 1986, we not only developed other projects in hydroelectric, projects in biomass, projects in gas, but we were able to buy other developers' projects that were pretty well underway. And so we began to grow like Topsy. In 1986, just 2 years later, we were interviewed by Inc. magazine, and they informed us that we were the fastest growing company in the world. Inc. magazine's fastest growing company, all within that short period of time. And so that was pretty heady stuff to think about back then. Within 2 more years, we had acquired more projects, and in some cases had acquired whole businesses. But again, all pretty much in the renewable energy power plant business. In 1988, an offer came over the transom from a guy named T. Boone Pickens, and he kept raising his offer by 1/4 a share, and we raised our offer, our counter, by 1/4 of a share, and pretty soon it got up to a point where it was an offer we couldn't refuse. So T. Boone Pickens bought the company, and he asked me to stay on to work with 2 cogeneration companies that were down in Southern California. And for 2 years, I built those companies into profitable companies. One was a simple cogen where we were providing steam and electricity to users, and they were community colleges, corporations who had headquarters like Pac Bell or Intel. And the second company was a solar company. In the meantime, in the late 80s, my brother and I took some of the profits that we got out of the acquisition from Boone Pickens, and we began to look around for other opportunities. Now, my brother owned a hydroelectric company in Michigan that was 45 miles of dams and rivers, and it generated about $1 million a year in net cash flow. And so it was a pretty good platform upon which to build a new company. Well, we used that company to acquire a wind farm. Didn't know anything about the wind business. In fact, we'd stayed away from the wind business because we didn't understand how it worked. Well, that wind farm was on the verge of bankruptcy, and so we had to find a way to make the windmills work so that we could get the utilities to pay us under the contract. Well, pretty quickly we learned about the wind business, and 2 or 3 things that came through were, number one, we had to have the right type of contract. And back then, California had one of the first renewable tariffs in North America. It was a fixed contract. It was levelized so that it went up so many cents a year. Number two, we had to know how the windmills worked, because if we couldn't fix them, we were going to go broke. And number three, that the business model for wind was the wrong business model. It was a service model. The developers all sold essentially windmills. What they were selling was the tax credits behind the windmills. And the idea was that once you have a windmill, Mr. Doctor, lawyer, or dentist, we'll operate it for you. We'll take money off the top from your power contract, and we'll use it to pay our service fees. So it was a service business. So pretty quickly we converted all those doctors, lawyers, and dentists into public shareholders of a public company that we created to own the wind farm. The next thing that we learned was that we had to be vertically integrated. So we acquired a construction company that had great experience in the wind business, and we acquired an engineering company that knew how to design systems. With those 3 components, the generating company, the installation company, and the design company, we went public again in 1992. That company was called New World Power, and New World was the first wind company to go public in the United States. Because we had good access to capital, we acquired other wind farms that were broken or troubled. And pretty soon we had a very large conglomeration of wind where, because of our vertical integration, we could take turbines down, put them back up, alter them, make them more efficient, and create greater output. During this time, we had the opportunity to work with large Fortune 100 companies, because as the wind business was becoming more mature and technologies were less risky and more commercial, companies like General Electric and Westinghouse started to look at the business as one that they would get into in the future. And so we did some joint ventures with General Electric. We did a joint venture on the design of a large wind turbine. It was one of their first. And they used that design to mature their technology line. We did a joint venture with Westinghouse. And the joint venture with Westinghouse was that we acquired all of their renewable assets. They had renewable assets in geothermal, in solar, and they had other renewable assets overseas that they wanted us to acquire. Their goal was to be the largest EPC, engineering, procurement, construction company in the wind business. And they wanted us to help them with an advantage in North America. Later on, we used the additional capital to acquire a solar company. That solar company was called Photocom. And through Photocom, developed some more joint ventures with companies like Kyocera, and eventually with companies like Siemens Solar, and later on, I developed a joint venture with Shell Solar. So the solar company was a small company, about 20 million in sales. But it had a unique distribution infrastructure that was reaching down into South America and reaching overseas into Asia. And so we brought in some of the top solar vendors that had previously not been in North America, signed up exclusive agreements with them, and gave them access to our infrastructure. In the meantime, we acquired other distribution companies to come in up under the Photocom platform. We acquired companies in Brazil, Argentina, Canada, and Mexico. After those acquisitions, we became the largest solar manufacturer / distributor in the Americas. Now, I'm proud of what I've done in those two companies. I'm proud that a lot of the assets are still around. The assets are being held by companies with household names like GE. GE holds a large number of the wind assets that we built, including assets that were overseas in Mexico, Costa Rica, Argentina. Kyocera Solar eventually bought Photocom, and so the company that we built is now Kyocera Solar.